All of Israel and all people who love life are mourning today over the death of the three kidnapped Israeli yeshiva boys murdered by ruthless terrorists. It's amazing the United States has been conducting secret talks with Hamas for 6 months, despite labeling Hamas, as they should be, a terrorist group. They say that ISIS is even worse than Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda is worse than Hamas, but how much worse do you have to be when you kidnap 3 innocent young boys, murder them, and then the majority of the population is celebrating, and the ambulance taking away the 3 dead bodies is pelted with stones by the Palestinian population. This week's Torah portion has some vital lessons for us. It goes back to thousands of years ago in the portion called Balak, where a non-Jewish king, Balak, hires a non-Jewish prophet named Balaam to curse Israel. Now, Balaam obviously wants to earn his salary and incur the pleasure of the king, and so tries hard to curse Israel, but God keeps sending signals to him, telling him it's wrong, it's not to do that. Remember in Genesis it says, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. But still he tries to do that. And God sends all kinds of signals, including his donkey, which he's riding on, who talks to him and tells him to stop. But that doesn't stop Balaam. So finally he climbs the mountain and offers, when he sees how beautiful Israel is, he sees the tents of Israel, he's compelled to bless instead of curse. The king can't believe it. And what's the blessing? The blessing is very beautiful. It includes one of the central lines of Jewish liturgy, Ma tovu olecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. What did he see? He saw the beautiful Jewish lives. In fact, an objective look at the world will see that Israel is the only bastion of democracy in the whole Middle East. It's the only wall we have against complete tyranny and terrorism in the whole Middle East, which will threaten the whole world. We now have, in the last couple of days, a declared Islamic caliphate in the middle of Iraq. We have violent terrorist groups all over. Libya is now in the hands of terrorists. Egypt almost was, Muslim Brotherhood. Syria is now partly ISIS-controlled. The north and western part of Iraq is now ISIS-controlled. Al-Qaeda's growing all over. We have UK and American terrorists fighting for ISIS who are going to return to the UK and the US and bring terrorism here, God forbid. And yet Israel contributes more than any other country in the world to, per capita and even grossly, to the welfare of the world. They have the most modern and efficient water desalting plants that are going to help solve the world's water problems. They are amazingly innovative in so many areas, including technology, your cell phone, your computer, energy, and medically. They keep coming up with things that will save the world, feed the world. And yet, even though those blessings are apparent to anybody who opens their eyes, the world seems to ignore them and instead condemn Israel, threaten Israel, want to boycott Israel. So many. And so we have vital lessons here that we learn. First, that the story of the non-Jewish king wanting to curse Israel is still true in many periods of history and true today. Whether it's overtly wanting to kill Jews, like Hamas's charter says, and destroy Israel, or covertly by, for example, many of the European countries saying we should boycott companies that do business in the historic Jewish territories of Judea and Samaria. But we also know that in the end, Israel will prevail, just as it prevailed in that story. But we have to keep our hopes up and keep our powder dry, as the old expression is, to know that we're fighting a real evil here. This kind of evil can't be coddled, it can't be talked to, it can't be reasoned with, and it can't be ignored. It has to be fought, just as the fighting. You can't love terrorists to death. You can't love them into liking you. Maybe there's a couple that can be changed through reason. There are stories like that, but most of them have to be fought. It is an evil fight. Because until the Messianic time comes and people are no longer afraid to sit under their own vine and fig tree and no one will make them afraid, it's the real world dealing with real evil. and we are facing real evil. And so as the world mourns the death of these 3 boys and the lesson we keep on learning about the murder of Jews, there were suicides and murders of Jews going on constantly in Israel by terrorists until we built a separation fence, just like the United States is trying to build in the southern part of our country, and so many countries have, and yet the world condemned them. And as soon as that separation fence went up, the suicide murdering deaths stopped dramatically, lowered dramatically. We have to do what we have to do to preserve lives. The world seems to be okay with dead Jews. The question is, it can tolerate live Jews, and Jews know it has to do what it has to do to defend themselves. Can't really count on the United States in the same way that we could at one time. We have Muslim Brotherhood people working in the U.S. administration. We have President Obama, who let Iran have, without destroying it, he could have, our most advanced drone, which they've reverse engineered. Iran, we've been talking to for years now under the Obama administration, and still there's no end in sight to their nuclear ambitions. Libya is now Al-Qaeda. Syria, Lebanon is Hezbollah with 60,000 missiles aimed at Israel. Gaza is now controlled by Hamas, and ISIS is now in Gaza. Jordan is now being threatened, and Israel is going to try and help Jordan stave off the ISIS control. ISIS is now controlling the Syrian border of the Golan on the edge of Israel. And so it seems like the Torah portion keeps replaying itself. We just pray that the world will see the blessings of Israel, and we must maintain our strength and our courage. And it's a time for strength and courage. When Joshua was afraid of taking over after Moses, God said to him, Moses said to him, Chazak v'yamatz, be strong and of good courage. And that's the vital lesson of Parashat Balak. Next week we get to the Parsha of Pinchas. And Pinchas is the story of a zealous priest who with his strength and valor, staved off an effort to seduce Israel, Jews, away from the worship of the one God. Just as Jews today are being seduced by forces that are anti-Israel. I was at a Jewish festival recently, and there were Jews standing behind a table calling for the boycott of Israel, and telling me that Zionism is the worst thing ever created. Jews saying this. And so Parashat Balak stands as a clarion call in this very sad week as we mourn the death of these 3. And pray the world will come to see the beauty of the tents and sanctuaries of Israel.